Yo, what's up guys, Tyler here. Today we're going to talk about 5th tier towers. So, as most of you know, most of the 5th tier towers suck a lot. They just really do not provide the DPS you're hoping they provide, or the utility they provide is too specific and not really usable in an actual game of BTD6, and it ends up just being a waste, which is really a damn shame because they're these cool, amazing looking 5th tier towers. You can only get one of each in a game, and all this hype you're building up to them is a bit of a letdown when they're just not game saving or really good at all. There's, I would say, 4 5th tier towers worth using, and that would be the Commanche, the Permaspike, the Temple, and the Icicle Impale. Everything else is just way significantly weaker than those. And even the Icicle Impale is a step down from those 3, and the Temple is specific only at free play. So if we're looking at CHIMPS mode, we got 2 5th tiers that you're realistically going to expect in an average game, being, as we said, the Commanche and the Permaspike. Now, I've heard on the forums that the Commanche and the Wall of Fire are going to be indirectly nerfed in future updates. There's actually going to be a bug fix strictly nerfing the towers, making them a lot worse, which could be really bad, which might mean we'll be seeing a lot of repetitive Spike Factory, Permaspike, plus MAME Moab strategies, and that could be really old fast. So here I'm suggesting a bunch of buffs for 5th tier towers to bring you up to the tiers that Permaspike is also at. First off is the Crossbow Master, coming in at about $30,000 on hard mode approximately. This guy is straight garbage. He's not good at strong balloon popping power. He's not really good at group boom power. He's just kind of mediocre, like random Moab popping power, random ceramic. He's not even good at like space ceramic pop power, because a lot of his pop power just comes out of, you know, the pierce he does have in a straight line. Of course, it's kind of confusing how you actually can use this guy effectively, because you can't actually. He's just simply not good. His DPS for his cost is really bad. Like, it's half the cost of Commanche and has probably something like 1/10 of the popping power. Probably even worse. It's just all around not that great. So something I would do to probably fix it is actually have it crit more. I don't know how much more damage it does when it crits, but it seems like it's significant. I would definitely up the crit rate, and then maybe up the attack rate like a little bit. Otherwise, I mean, there's just not too much else to really do with it. Its attack speed is pretty high, its range is massive, its pierce is big enough. I mean, unless you wanted to specialize against rounds like 63, 76, maybe you could up the pierce, but I think just upping the crit rate overall might be a lot better just as a DPS tower, because it also is very position dependent, and just most maps probably will not let this type of tower succeed. Like, you're really only going to get some benefit off of like beginner and intermediate maps with this tower, and that's just not good enough for this game, I don't think. Next up is the Moab Domination, the 5th tier boomerang. This guy costs a metric fuck ton. I don't even remember. It's like 70k or something ridiculous like that. Yeah, it's just not worth the money. It is so over the top as far as price is considered. You're never gonna afford this in CHIMPS mode, and if you get this in late game, it's just not really worth it, because his Moab stun thing is really slow. It hits like only a couple ZOMGs at a time, and still they overall make progress just with how slow it shoots. I don't know if it has like a, you know, pierce or something like that. Its damage also is not that significant. If you're looking for actual good Moab, etc. blackback or blowback, you're just going to want Superstorm in late game. That's significantly better without a doubt. This guy just kind of stuns a few ZOMGs every now and then, and also kind of sucks against DDTs. Every now and then it might have the power to take down DDTs, but it's really just not that great. And if you actually compare it to the 4th tier boomerang, the only difference is that the 5th tier, it fires about 2.5 times faster for something like 10 times the price. That's just not acceptable. It doesn't make any sense to me. The only additional benefit is this thing gets full map range, as opposed to the 4th tier only being able to do the Moab trigger in its range. Also, its main boomerang has a few more layers of pop power, but it doesn't really add up. Like, it's not going to be useful against anything. So honestly, I think the biggest thing this needs is a price buff. I could justify knocking this thing down to 20,000 in price, or knocking it down to 30,000 in price, and maybe upping the attack speed. And even then, I don't quite know if it would be used, just because it has such a niche use, where you could probably get more use out of Ice Cone Pale, get more use out of, you know, Commanche, get more use out of Superstorm. It just doesn't even seem that great, but just significantly knocking up or down its price would be a great start. Next up is the Bloon Crunch. So this was actually in my top 5 5th tier tower videos, and I think it needs to be buffed. And I feel like that's just a statement, general statement about the weakness of 5th tier towers. Like, this is seriously one of the best 5th tier towers, and I really think it still needs a buff. So yeah, it is pretty expensive, but don't get me wrong, it's actually pretty powerful when you have Monkey Knowledge off. The main thing that actually makes this thing bad is Monkey Knowledge being on, resulting in the stun not re-stunning or whatever. Like, if it hits a stun balloon, it doesn't re-stun it, and then the attack timing and stun timing is like so perfect that it will only keep balloon stun half the time. Like, it's so perfectly bad with the Monkey Knowledge that you almost just want to turn it Monkey Knowledge off if you have any plans to use this. So outside of that, it's actually still pretty reasonable because it can stun ZOMGs and below very, very well. It's even not terrible against DDTs, but it still lacks a little bit against DDTs. It's just this price is so ridiculous, you're never going to get it in an actual game. You're never going to really get it in a CHIMPS mode run. It's 60k. It's pretty ridiculous, and plus the additional cost of everything else by it. It just does not quite seem worth the money. So honestly, I think I'll just give this thing another price buff. I'd also probably allow it to re-stun already stunned balloons by it, because it does have a finite pop power. I believe it's 40, so it's not like it's going to stun every single balloon permanently. Once it starts stunning it, it's going to be a lot more reasonable. It's only going to be able to stun 40 balloons basically permanently, because its stun really is pretty permanent. It's seriously not bad, but I think just changing the price maybe up to 40k I could see would be pretty solid, because you still need other balloons to help it. It's not going to be that great against all these ceramics that come out of these Moabs and BFEs and ZOMGs. It's still not going to be great against DDTs, but 40k would allow the other towers to do significantly better with its help. So I could see that being a reasonable price. Next up, we got the Super Maelstrom. Now, honestly, abilities in general are pretty trash. First off, because of the cooldown, so you can't use it right away. And second off, just because 90% of the time, it's just a bad overpriced tower. It's only good when the ability is active, but the thing is, you can't just rely on a sudden burst of energy to make up for the time that it's trash. It's the tower's only as good as its weakest moments, and ability towers have some really weak moments. So this is one of the cheaper ones, and this one's one of the ones I actually do think could be buffed to be something pretty good. It's meant to be good against group balloons, not so much Moabs. However, after round 80, we get super ceramics, and this thing suddenly becomes completely and utter trash. It cannot handle super ceramics. This is supposed to be the amazing Maelstrom that can take down super ceramics, and it can only take down normal super ceramics if it has a like 3-second lead on them and is able to shoot them over the entire map. And don't even get me started about fortified super ceramics. Like, that's just, oh boy, oh, that's just never happening. So I feel like a buff for this would be in order. I think what would be useful is adding 1 or 2 layers of damage to the ability blades, just so it does a little bit better balloon cleanup. Then it can be more consistent against even Moabs too, because it is a 5th tier, and it is still kind of expensive. $15,000 is nothing to scoff at. You still got to cough over that money somehow, and most of the time it's going to be pretty bad. Another thing I would do is probably increase its duration to half the length of its cooldown. Right now it's at about 1/3 the length of its cooldown, which is not bad, but it could be a lot better, I think. Especially for a cheap tower, just having it be on Maelstrom blades half the time could be pretty solid. At least a reasonable step up over the 4th tier blade Maelstrom. Next up, we got the Crippled Boy, which is actually a pretty interesting tower. It does 60 layers of damage and stuns the blimps really well. Like, it has the same main Moab level of stun, where it'll just absolutely stop a ZOMG and below in its tracks. It'll actually do pretty good work even against 2 blimps with maximum speed, and don't even get me started about village buffs, alchemist buffs, yada yada yada. This thing can actually stun you know, a reasonable amount of stuff. Can be pretty useful. And its biggest benefit, I think, is the fact that whenever it hits a balloon during the time of impact, whether it's stunned or if it's a BAD, and just keeps moving, towers attacking will do 5 more layers of damage to it, which is actually really, really good, right? Yeah, you could definitely see that being used in free play, where you just have that hit a BAD and have low damage dealing towers, just keep attacking it, but high attack rates. Maybe something like Druid Squad, maybe something like Super Monkey Fan Club. They would have a significant damage buff against these BADs and all that. But it does seem to only be a free play tower, and I do think you could up the price of it so it could be barely used in CHIMPS mode and Impoppable mode without completely overbuffing it. I could see putting the price at 45,000, not breaking the game because it's at 60k now. Maybe even upping the amount of layers it'll hit per shot from 60 to 75 or 100 possibly, because right now it doesn't even one-shot a Super Ceramic, and there's no real reason to get this in CHIMPS mode. I think it would be nice to possibly see a reason, maybe for BAD popping, or maybe for just general decent stunnage. I could see helping out on 97 for sure, although that's never really a problem around, is it? I feel like it just needs to have a little bit more use outside of free play mode, so dropping the price would definitely help with that. Maybe even 40,000. I'm feeling real ballsy. Next up, we have the Sky Shredder, which is actually a really cool 5th tier ace upgrade. I believe it's 42,000 give or take overall. It's actually not too bad. It has a pretty cool missile attack where each of the missiles do like 150 damage, and it's also splash, which is kind of a big deal. And I don't think that's really a problem with the tower. I think that's just decent, good, Moab pop and power. Wouldn't rely on it or anything. But the darts themselves have a lot to be lacking. So they're meant to be, you know, the group pop and power. They're just the best damage dealers, and they're really good before wave 80. As you can see, it pretty much destroys wave 79. It's pretty solid. But the second you bring in Super Ceramics, it becomes yet another shit show. These darts fucking suck against Super Ceramics. You know, it deals like a little bit of damage here and there, but you generally want a DPS tower like this to generally do well against these Super Ceramics, because there's not that many towers that really do well against Super Ceramics, and especially fortified Super Ceramics. So having this guy after wave 80 just feels like a total waste, because his Moab power isn't like the best ever. It's just average. It doesn't really, it definitely does not kill the round 100 BAD. It doesn't really do that well against the OMGs. It takes a while. This is one of the longer advanced maps too, and DDTs it barely gets, but I feel like it still takes too long, all things considered. But I'm not really complaining about the Moab pop and power, where the pull is supposed to be its insane dart pop and power, how it floods the screen with darts, how it has so many darts they block out the sun and destroy all the non-Moab class balloons. But it doesn't really seem to deliver on that promise the game gives to it. So I could see buffing it by throwing in more darts. I believe it looks like 40 or so darts, maybe 32. I never really count, but honestly, adding in another 10, another 15 darts to his big dart circle could have a lot denser version of the cloud. That way, when the darts kind of get far away from the tower, they don't really miss much. They still cover pretty much the entirety of the map, so they'll be guaranteed to hit the balloons that may be escaping. And something I think could just help is a higher attack speed as far as the darts are concerned. Just continue to flood the screen with these darts, make it a total mesh, just absolutely blot out the sun. And maybe like an additional, 30% attack speed, 40%. I wouldn't go 50%. I don't know if I'd go 40% either, but just increasing the amount of darts and attack speed would be awesome for this tower. Might actually let it have some decent competitive use. Next up, we have the biggest one, which is honestly a pile of garbage. It is so underwhelming, especially compared to the BTD5 mortar, which has a huge explosion. And this is just the 4th tier BTD5 mortar. It has a big, satisfying explosion, and it does decent damage for its price. It translates pretty well over to the BT6 4th tier mortar, but the transition from the 4th tier mortar to the 5th tier mortar is horrendous. The price multiplies by 4, and the damage output multiplies basically by 2. Something that definitely should happen is upping the damage output. Now, maybe 20 to 25 might just be okay, but something that would be amazing to see is increasing the radius of this thing. It literally has the exact same radius animation as the 5th tier mortar, or sorry, 4th tier mortar, and maybe there's a bit of a difference that's just not shown in animation, but it's incredibly unsatisfying just to see how small the range is. I would love to see the range be close to half the map for this guy, have it be that massive, have it look like a mini nuke that comes out of this $50,000 tower every time, because if you're putting that much money in, you might as well guarantee that you're going to be popping the ceramics. And by the time you get this, you're going to do a jack shit against super ceramics. Anyways, it does not beat super ceramics, especially not fortified super ceramics, and maybe eventually beats normal super ceramics, but it needs to have a perfect curve, and you're not going to always have that luxury. You usually have straight lines, so upping the damage and upping the range would just be huge for this tower to at least see some use. This video is getting pretty long and it's getting pretty late, so I'm going to cut it here. I have so many more 5th tier towers to talk about. While recording this video, it was ridiculous to me how underpowered these 5th tier towers were, especially when compared to Commanche and Permaspike and Icicle and Pale. It's just crazy how unused they are. It's just so much better to use 4th tier towers, 3rd tier towers, 2nd tier towers than these things. So expect more videos like this in the future, talking more about balance, talking more about towers that could be better, because honestly it's crazy how underwhelming it is. And I think 5th tier towers should be a lot more exciting, a lot more worthwhile getting. So implementing these buffs, while they seem aggressive, would just overall be a lot better for the game. And I don't think a single one of the buffs I suggested would actually make it too overpowered. I don't think a single buff suggested would make any of the towers more powerful than Commanche currently is. And honestly, ignoring the glitch, Commanche is actually pretty balanced. Fight me on that. Actually, do fight me civilly in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think about these 5th tier towers. Let me know if you think the buffs are too extreme, if they're not enough, what other towers you think should be buffed, and how so. I would love to hear all that. I think NinjaQ would love to hear it too. I'll be sending this video to them, hoping they'll take some of the advice in the comment sections, you know, so keep that in mind. Anyways, yeah, expect more videos like this. See you guys later. Peace.